Trans people exist. There are more than two sexes. Donald Trump should stop booty clapping to Elon Musk. Do not interrupt a black trans woman when I'm speaking.
Just when you think the Wi-Fi password activists can't get any crazier, a new trans radical enters the scene and crashes out on live TV. We're going to break this down and so much more in today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across our media, our politics, and the internet, all from an independent perspective. And oh boy, do we have a action-packed show for you coming up today with so much Delulu to unpack in one sitting. You can probably tell I'm in a hotel room, currently traveling at a conference in Colorado, but I didn't want to miss my daily chat with you all, so we're going to do our best. Apologies if the quality isn't what it usually is, but still wanted to bring you something, and we've got a wild Piers Morgan segment to unpack. So Piers, who I like a lot, and I actually think does a very good job of having a diverse perspectives on his mega popular YouTube show, hosted a debate on the obvious question of trans athletes in women's sports between Riley Gaines, who is a female athlete who had to compete against Leah Thomas, the infamous trans woman who most people thought was pretty unfair for Leah to compete in women's swimming, against Blossom. Now, Blossom is a crazy trans activist you may remember from the time that Blossom, you'll see, is not very ladylike, threatened Blair White and threatened her physical safety. Yeah, well, that Blossom is who Piers decided to have on for this wild segment that was one of the craziest things I've seen in a long time. Here's the first clip that, oh boy, just from the very beginning, the first time Blossom opened up that big mouth and started yapping, the Delulu started flowing with very little delay.
Let's be clear, Donald Trump is a complete moron. Donald Trump talks so much about waste and fraud, and you're signing a whole executive order banning trans women from playing sports. According to the NCAA, there are over 510,000 athletes. And within those athletes, there are only less than 10 trans athletes. So you mean to tell me Donald Trump signed an executive order for 0.002 of the population when trans people are only 1%? That's a waste. That is a waste. Trans people exist. There are more than two sexes. There are intersex people that exist. And I think that it's nothing more than conservative propaganda that because Donald Trump is in power, he is able to use. I think Donald Trump should stop booty clapping to Elon Musk and actually get something done in this country. And eradicating trans people is not going to be it. And I stand 10 toes down on that.
You tell him, Blossom. You get it, girl, with your very ladylike mannerisms and language about Trump booty clapping Elon. That is not a visual I needed today, guys. Ew. I just ate lunch, Blossom. I just ate lunch. Now, there's so much to unpack in that delusional clip, like the fact that nobody's banning trans women from sports. They can still compete just in the male division in accordance with their biological sex. Anytime you hear someone say they're banning trans women from sports, that is misleading and inaccurate. And they pull this talking point out a lot, that there are only 10 at the collegiate level, and that may be, but it's more about the principle of fairness and safety and equality and biological reality, and also there are more at the high school level and below that. So simply pointing out that there's only 10 at the college level doesn't make the point that you think it makes, because a lot of this is about the principle, and even in those 10 cases, it affects a lot of people, but also there's more than 10 cases when you look below the college level. We're not just talking about college sports. Trump's executive order applied to high school and lower level sports as well. And Blossom is just wrong. There are not more than two sexes. Basically, all human beings can be categorized as male or female based on the structure of their reproductive system. Biologists don't define sex by your chromosomes, by your vibes, by your appearance, by your secondary sex characteristics. No, they define it based on whether your reproductive system is oriented towards the production of sperm or egg. And there are only two options. There are some people with genetic conditions called intersex conditions. Most of them can actually still be put into the male or female category technically, but even then, it's an exception, not the rule. We still say there's only two sides to a coin, even though 1 out of 1,000,000 times you flip it, it might land perfectly on its side. We still say that humans have two legs, even though There are some people who are only born with one leg or who lose a leg. You can even be born with a third limb. Like, there are exceptions. It doesn't change the facts and the rules. And to call any of this basic biology and reality conservative propaganda is kind of telling on yourself. It's kind of admitting that the left, at least on this one issue, has just lost touch with reality. So now stating facts is considered conservative propaganda. Blossom was not off to a strong start, as you can, I'm sure, already tell, but it got worse. It got way worse. And somehow the issue, this was supposed to be about trans sports, but Blossom just couldn't stop yapping about random things. And somehow the issue of race came up, and Blossom started screaming at Piers that he was a race baiter. She couldn't provide any evidence of that. And then Blossom went on to say that she can't possibly be racist because she's black, and black people can't be racist. Take a listen to this second, very chaotic clip.
Be racist, Piers.
Now you can
Black
respond.
Women cannot be racist to white women. Are you kidding me?
Sorry?
That makes no sense.
Sorry?
Black women cannot be racist to white women. Do you not understand that?
Oh, yes, they can.
You don't have the intellectual
Oh, yes, they
capacity
can.
to understand that.
Oh, yes, they
But that's
can.
very much
And you've been
impossible.
racist to me.
That's very much
You've
impossible.
been racist to me, a white man, by saying I'm a race baiter. Yeah.
How am I racist to you? I'm black. I can't be racist
You
to
called
you.
me a race
Are you
baiter
kidding
with
me?
no
You're
evidence.
Racist to me.
When have I
You
been
can
a
be
race
racist-
baiter?
You can be racist to me. Let me check you on that. You talk about this race card or whatnot. The race card is reality. My experience as a black trans woman is completely different than yours as
Reality?
a white cis man.
Well, let me ask you about reality
I'm
then.
speaking. Do not interrupt a black trans woman when I'm speaking.
Oh, don't be
Do
so
not interrupt a
pathetic.
black trans woman when I'm speaking, okay?
Oh my God, the bit at the end is so obnoxious to me. Blossom does this, don't interrupt a black trans woman when she's speaking. Girl, no, absolutely not. You're not entitled to some sort of special protection from interruptions because of your identity. On a show like this, people interrupt each other and they argue. And Blossom interrupted them all the time and talked over them, but then wants to weaponize Blossom's identity as a black trans woman. Again, not the most ladylike individual if you ask me, but I won't say more, I'll say less. Anyway, though, you want to weaponize that identity to protect yourself from interruption, like as if you get some sort of special privileges. Like, that is not equality, that is weaponizing your identity. And the whole racism thing, first, calling Piers a race baiter for no reason is totally irrelevant to the topic, is not fair. Piers is actually pretty moderate and seems like a nice guy. And then two, to fall back on this, well, I can't be racist to you because I'm a black woman. Here, I can explain. Progressives do this thing where they claim black people or other minorities can't be racist against white people because they use a definition of racism that implies structural power imbalances. They say, well, only people who are powerful in society against people who are marginalized, that's what racism is. And so because black people and black trans people allegedly are marginalized, they can't be racist towards a privileged person. It's all kind of woke gobbledygook. But more importantly, it's not the definition of racism. You can Google it right now, and what comes up is basically just prejudice or discrimination or bigotry towards someone because of their membership in a racial group. It doesn't have that woke stuff added into it. They've tried to create that, but it's still not in the dictionary, at least not as the top definition or the one that most people subscribe to. And I say this all the time, but progressives don't like to listen. The dictionary is not supposed to be a choose your own adventure book. Okay? Words are supposed to have meanings, and you can't just make up new definitions and insist everyone go along with them and then gaslight people like this. It's absurd. People of all colors and creeds can be bigoted and racist towards people of different colors and different creeds. It happens all the time in different directions, and it's always wrong. And trying to weaponize your alleged marginalized identity to protect you from criticism is not going to cut it for me, babe. Now, thankfully, things calmed down in this segment, and a normal conversation and just kidding, y'all. Just kidding. Buckle up and listen to this third clip.
So just to be clear, would you want the American Olympics, the LA Olympics, would you want them to be gender neutral where the sexes compete with each other?
Absolutely. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think long as
do
it's
you also believe
of
it's
trans
completely
women and
insane.
trans men and non-binary
Do you
people,
also believe
then yes,
that we should
why not?
combine
It's completely
Why not?
insane.
This country was built on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And all those
Exactly.
countries trying
This
to
is
get rid
why
of
that's so nuts.
DEI. That does include cis women like
And you know what you would do?
Hello?
You would exclude all women from winning medals. Well done.
Why
Answer
are we
my
saying this
question.
about women, though?
Answer my
Women
question.
are just as strong as men.
I'm asking
sorry.
you.
I'm sorry, women are just as strong as men.
So
Women
just to
are
be
just
clear,
as powerful as men.
okay.
And I don't believe that.
Okay, Blossom.
That's just your opinion.
So Blossom,
that's not always fact.
Blossom, should we combine the Paralympics with the regular Olympics? Have them all compete with each other?
I mean, why not? And to go back to Riley's point, to
why
that
not?
last point.
Okay, you are completely insane.
Go back to
Y'all, this Blossom person might be the most delusional individual to ever feature on my channel or on Piers Morgan. And y'all, that is saying something. The idiocy and the detachment from reality. This person is a member of an anti-reality cult. To stare into a camera like I'm doing right now and say, women are stronger than men is an insane statement. It is one all of us know in terms of upper body strength and other sports and things like that to objectively simply not be the case. And you completely discredit yourself when you say things like this. And it is so ironic to me to see people who would call themselves feminists basically advocate for the abolition of women's sports. I mean, there are probably some exceptions in specific sports, but in many things like basketball or soccer, if you had open all sexes competition, women basically just wouldn't get to play at the highest levels. Like, congrats. Is that your feminist utopian goal here? No, there's a reason that women's sports exist as a separate category. And the idea that some people actually don't get that we're actually that delulu and that out of touch, and this is somebody associated with me somehow as a normal gay person, like that's a part of me? No, thank you. What does any of that crazy have to do with me? But I've been lumped in with that by the alphabet activists and the professional LGBT Inc. class as if we're one and the same or have anything in common at all, when we really don't, if you ask me, because I'm in touch with reality. In fact, my whole identity is kind of rooted around the idea of biological sex being a big part of what it means to be gay. And this person's basically out here saying biology isn't real, sex is made up, blah, blah, blah. Everything's a feeling, a spectrum. Even like the thing about the Special Olympics being mixed in, like, just, it's so absurd. And I have to give credit. I have to shout out a couple of my friends who are trans who have pointed this out, like Brianna Wu. This person, Blossom, is a cancer to the trans community. And there needs to be some sort of petition among trans and LGBT people, even liberals, even woke people, to stop letting this person on camera and stop them going on shows or debates or panels, because every time this lovely ladylike woman comes up on my camera, I know I'm about to hear the craziest shit I've ever heard in my life. And I know that the polling and support for LGBT is about to go down by 5. Like, seriously, if you made up in a lab, if all the furthest right, most bigoted people imaginable made up a caricature of a trans activist in a lab that they could perfectly mock and use to paint everyone as crazy and extreme, it would be this person. It would be this lovely, ladylike individual. And that's my problem with Blossom, is not just that she is so incredibly uneducated and says silly and ridiculous things. Frankly, lots of people in media do that. It's that there's a level of ego here, of promoting yourself and your career at the direct expense of the community you say you care about. Like, Blossom has to know that the response to Blossom is almost universally negative. Almost no one finds them a compelling speaker or convincing or like a good face for this movement, but she can, I don't know, maybe draw attention, get more followers, whatever, get validation somehow in a sick, sort of twisted way by becoming the internet's villain for a day, by going on these shows and making a fool of herself. But then we're supposed to believe that she has the best interest of LGBT people in mind. No, you don't, babe. You're a grifter looking for your 15 minutes of fame, and frankly, you just played yourself. These segments and these people give me headaches, and they sap the joy out of my soul a little bit, because I really do want to live in a world where gay people, lesbians, bisexuals, trans adults can live their best lives and be happy. But people like this are giving ammunition to critics and haters and just setting us back decades every time they open their enormous sized mouths. What did y'all think of this segment? Have you encountered this Blossom, lovely, ladylike individual before? Let me know in the comments. Do hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Before we get into our next segment, I want to make a quick correction and clarification. So yesterday when we talked about academic research spending, some people pointed out in the comments that I misspoke when I talked about the going to indirect costs. I pointed out, and this is true, that many elite institutions like Harvard and Yale that have billions of dollars have indirect cost rates north of 60%. But I misinterpreted and misexplained what that means. I assumed incorrectly that that means that if they give out $100 in a grant and the indirect rate is 69%, that $69 goes to admin. What it was explained to me, it actually means is that for every dollar that was spent, they spend $69 on administration. So it's not as high as I presented it, but it's still pretty freaking high. I do apologize for the mistake though, and I thank the people who pointed it out in the comments. Okay, up next, I'm gonna do something y'all probably aren't ready for. Y'all probably are not expecting. I'm going to defend, sort of, Jasmine Crockett, the far left, incredibly bombastic and outspoken, shall we say, Democratic member of Congress who has become something of a media darling and is even being talked about as a presidential contender. God help us. Anyway, I've trashed her a lot on the show lately because she says crazy stuff, like when she ranted about mediocre white boys and all that. And I think she's everything that's wrong with modern progressive politics. However, there was a news cycle about her yesterday on the conservative media ecosystem and right-wing Twitter that actually kind of did her dirty in a way that I honestly thought was unfair. Let me roll you a clip of Jasmine Crockett that was going viral in conservative circles.
Now, President Trump says he likes the idea of giving some of the savings from Doge back to Americans as kind of a dividend. Would you support that?
Listen, he's just telling a lie. He's not the one that had anything to do with the $1,200 refunds that people had during the midst of COVID that was done by a Democratic House and Democratic Senate. Right now, what they're going to do is say, hey, we want to give you a refund, but Congress won't let us because they already know that there's just no money for that. The only reason that those refunds came before was because we were living in different times. This was a time in which hopefully we won't ever go through again. We had a once in a lifetime pandemic. The bad part is that I don't know if it's once in a lifetime because we know that Ebola, unfortunately, was detected right here in New York here recently. And if we continue down this road of getting rid of scientists or deciding that we don't want to rely on experts as it relates to what they're telling us to do, or we don't want to deal with vaccines and medicine in this country, then we may be facing not only our next pandemic, but our next 2, 3, or 4 pandemics because of their incompetence. So no, we are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you.
Now, when I first saw this clip, I was kind of outraged like everybody else. I was like, did this woman really just suggest with her whole chest proudly, what is $5,000 even going to do for you as an American? I was like, how out of touch are you? Oh my gosh, that's an insane thing to say. Americans, $5,000 would be a life-changing amount of money. Not life-changing, but like would totally turn someone's budget upside down potentially that's struggling to get by in America. So many families could use that to get Christmas presents and catch up on their bills. And it made her seem incredibly out of touch, right? And so she was condemned for this by all sorts of figures from all over right-wing Twitter and media. Donald Trump Jr. shared the clip and made fun of her and criticized her for it. So did Benny Johnson, the right-wing YouTuber and influencer, and the mega popular Libs of TikTok account did the same thing, labeling Jasmine Crockett a typical out-of-touch, hypocritical Democrat. That tweet from Libs of TikTok has over 2 million views. There's just one problem. This clip is actually extremely deceptively edited. The media outlet, the conservative media outlet that put it together, Town Hall, sliced it at a moment that kind of stripped Jasmine Crockett's comments of their full meaning. Take a listen to the part that they didn't show you.
So no, we are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you if you are unable to find a job, because I am telling people we are headed towards a recession because the United States government is the 15th largest employer in the world. And so firing those that work for the federal government isn't going to necessarily create new jobs in private industry.
So what she actually said was that $5,000 isn't going to do anything for you if you lose your job because there's a recession. So you see how the conservative media people that were sharing that clip deceptively cut it to remove the context of her statement. What she said was not, oh, $5,000 won't do anything for an American. This $5,000 talk comes in the context of Doge wanting to give people rebates, basically, from the spending they cut, which I love the idea, but I'm kind of skeptical so far that they'll be able to actually identify that much waste to fund such big rebates. But anyway, they made it sound like Jasmine Crockett was so out of touch and dismissed altogether anybody like $5,000. What's that really going to do for an American? Which, of course, would be an incredibly out of touch thing to say. What she actually said, and you can hear in the clip, is it won't do much for you if you lose your job because there's a recession. That, it might be a point you disagree with or don't find compelling, but it's not the same thing. And these conservative media people deceptively cut that clip at the exact moment to completely change the meaning of what she said and make her look way worse than she actually should have based on the clip. I take real issue with that because it's a basic matter of integrity and fairness and accuracy as a media personality. And also, this is the same thing that left-wing media does and has done to Republicans for years. And these types were outraged over it, talked about how wrong and unfair it is. And yeah, you could say turnabout is fair play, but to me, integrity and honesty matter. And you should hold yourself to standards even if the other side doesn't. But here they are, like basically doing the Media Matters gig and clipping people dishonestly out of context and twisting their words to bash them to millions of people on the internet. And the whole thing was so dumb to me because, like, this woman is actually incredibly delulu. Like, she gives you so much real content to work with. If you want to criticize her, if you want to do a hit piece on her or make any content against her, there's so much real stuff to work with. Why did y'all have to deceptively edit things and create fake controversy? You're just discrediting yourselves in the criticism of this very radical, very extreme, and in my view, very toxic woman who is becoming a leader in the Democratic Party. It's dishonest and self-defeating in many ways, and I was really disappointed to see people doing this. Although honestly, not particularly surprised. What do you think? Did you see this clip and only see the edited version? Let me know in the comments. Okay, and now we got to talk about Steve Bannon, who is a far-right political commentator, OG MAGA type, who's kind of crazy and just did something that, honestly, I guess I'll just have to show you. This is from CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. He just made this hand gesture that is going viral.
The only way that they win is we retreat, and we're not going to retreat. We're not going to surrender. We're not going to quit. Fight, fight, fight. Amen.
So the context here is that a little while back, Elon went on stage and did an awkward gesture that looked like a Nazi salute, but he was saying, "My heart goes out to you," and making a gesture that came across as awkward. And people like me defended him as like, listen, he's autistic. He's not a Nazi. He just did an awkward gesture. He doesn't hate Jewish people. He's not genocidal or evil. Like, he's not trying to do a Nazi salute. He just made an awkward thing, and then it got mischaracterized by the media. We have that context, and Steve Bannon knows all about that. He went out there on purpose and made this gesture because he knows that it looks like and will be perceived as doing a Nazi salute at a major conservative political conference. That's insane, and that's evil. I mean, I don't know how to tell you this, but even if it's just trolling, which I think it is, I think he intentionally did this to trigger the libs or own the libs or the media or whatever, this is not the kind of thing to troll over. It is not funny or cute to pretend like you support the people who murdered 6 million Jews. That is not cute. That is not funny. It is terrible optics for the Republican political party and the Trump movement. And it's just like morally degrading. Like, don't you have higher standards for yourself than that? Are you really so dedicated to triggering the libs at any cost? I mean, there's also, and I don't really believe this, the idea that he's truly a Nazi and is actually doing a salute. I think he's intentionally trolling and trying to riff off the Elon thing and just upset the media and make liberals get all up in arms. But you know what? They kind of have a point. You're an actual political leader of this MAGA movement, somebody very influential in the modern GOP, and you're making Nazi hand gestures on stage at a conservative political action conference when you know the context of the whole Elon discourse. So this is not an accident. He can try to play cute, which he did in follow-up interviews.
That was a wave to the crowd, and it shows you how petrified, particularly the Daily Mail. This is once again the left-wing media insulting these people. The speech was about them.
But it's not an accident. This isn't just a hand gesture. I'm not buying that. He's not being honest. He intentionally did this to troll. And it's a terrible look and honestly profoundly insulting to Jewish people and to all the victims of the Holocaust and the Nazis and their terrible regime. I just find it so, so gross. Even if it's trolling like that, that's not okay to troll. And you're supposed to be a serious person with influence over the president. I don't want you trolling. It's like own the media at any cost is not something I'm on board with. It's not a moral or integrity-based way to go about the world and live your life, especially as an influential political figure. Now, Bannon's been fringe for a long time, sure, but he is a leader in the MAGA movement in some spheres, and to have him pulling this kind of thing is gifting critics of Trump and Trumpism the perfect layup. It is confirming everyone's worst beliefs and suspicions about Republicans, and it is profoundly insulting to Jews and the victims of the Holocaust, the many other victims of the Nazis, to use their trauma as a way to troll libs. Now, to be clear, I've defended MAGA. I didn't vote for Trump. I support some things he does, some things I don't. But I don't think that the MAGA movement is a Nazi movement. I think that's an insane thing that liberals and critics and progressive media say. It's a multiracial, multicultural movement from people of all races and backgrounds, all coming together to pursue an agenda that some of which I like, some of which I don't like so much. But the idea that it's like a Nazi movement is totally insane to me and not true, obviously. But then I try to explain that to people on the left, and then you have idiots like Steve Bannon going and doing this crap, which confirms or plays into their fears and suspicions, all while achieving literally nothing except upsetting people and causing controversy. To me, it's everything that's wrong with like the far right fringe. They have no discernment, no wisdom, no integrity, no moral principles. It's just own the libs at any cost. And that is not a good way to go about politics or life, and is not speak well of your character if that's the approach you take. What do you guys think? Do you agree with me, or do you somehow support what Steve Bannon did? Let me know in the comments. I do love to hear from you guys. And that'll be it for today's episode of the Rant vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you all for joining me in my hotel room in Colorado. Love doing the show with you guys, and I didn't even want to miss a single day. So do hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe if you aren't yet. Check out the merch store linked in the description. Just dropped new Your Delulu is showing line of items. And we will talk again real soon.